Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pulling you into a really bizarre mental space.
Yeah, it's a complete collision of worlds.
Right. I want you to imagine the heavy echoing silence of an ancient monastic library, right? But then it abruptly glitches into the rhythmic, bass-heavy hum of a hyper-modern server room.
Which is exactly the tension we're exploring today, because our mission is to look at a text that's well over 1,000 years old.
But, and here's the catch, we're not going to read it like a traditional book. We're going to audit it like a software engineer.
Which demands a complete rewiring of how you interact with ancient literature. I mean, we're essentially stripping away centuries of, subjective, mystical interpretation.
Yeah, all the poetry and emotion.
Exactly. And we're stepping directly into the cold, hard realm of structural logic.
So we're dissecting this fascinating framework presented by author J.R. Ahmed. We're specifically looking at Chapter 1 of his book, The Algebra of Revelation, which is titled The Systemic Distribution and Audit Methodology.
And right out of the gate, Ahmed asks you to look at the Quran not as a collection of religious verses, but as a master grid operating system.
Operating system.
Yeah, he treats the text as this highly sophisticated linguistic machine, one that's designed with built-in structural protocols and governed by a field's underlying mathematics.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because as an empiricist, when I look at the raw data, we are immediately confronted with this massive structural mystery.
The disconnected letters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Out of the 114 chapters, the surahs in the Quran, exactly 29 of them begin with mysterious, disconnected Arabic letters. Just raw, uncombined letters sitting right at the start of the file.
Which is wild when you think about it.
It is. And for centuries, people have just thrown their hands up. They call it ancient stylization,
right,
or maybe unknowable mystical riddles.
Right.
But Ahmed looks at this and says, no, this is a deliberate mathematical architecture.
Yeah, from a systems analysis perspective, those letters aren't mysteries you're supposed to blindly guess at. They are what Ahmed terms protocol-heavy module.
Protocol-heavy.
Yeah. In the language of computer science, those 29 chapters act as access points. They essentially provide the primary initialization codes for you, the auditor, to begin a structural analysis of reality itself.
Okay, I have to push back here.
Yeah.
Because this is where the raw numbers really bothered me on my first read.
The 29.
Yeah, the 29. If this is supposed to be a flawless universal system, why exactly 29 chapters? Out of 114, 29 is an incredibly uneven, almost arbitrary-sounding number.
It does seem that way at first.
Right. And furthermore, Ahmed points out that out of the entire Arabic alphabet, only 14 specific letters are used to construct these mysterious openings. If you're building a master grid operating system, locking out half your keyboard to write your most important code seems totally counterintuitive.
I get that. But that skepticism is actually the first step of the audit. And it's where the brilliance of the system's security really reveals itself.
Okay, how so?
Well, let's look at the alphabet first. There are 28 letters in Arabic, right?
Right.
The text takes exactly 14 of them. Ahmed calls them the prime 14, and isolates them to act purely as global protocols or metadata.
Leaving the remaining 14 letters to do what?
They are treated as local operators. They're utilized exclusively within the payload.
The payload.
Yeah, the actual operational text, the universal laws, the historical data that makes up the bulk of the book.
So it's an exact 50-50 split.
Exactly. 14 structural letters, 14 operational letters.
Okay, wow.
And what's fascinating here is that this 50-50 split creates a perfect mathematical balance within the code. In Arabic, the term for this deep structural balance is mizan.
Mizan, right.
Yeah. By creating a boundary where exactly half the phonetic variables act as structural headers and the other half functions strictly within the operational text, the system effectively locks itself. It is a security feature perfectly designed to prevent data corruption over millennia.
Oh, I see. But wait, how does that tie back to my issue with the number 29? How does locking the alphabet translate into 29 random chapters?
Because 29 isn't random at all. It's a prime number.
Right.
Think about it. If you, as a system architect, want to secure a textual grid across centuries, mapping your structural metadata across exactly 29 access points creates an indivisible boundary.
Because you can't divide it.
Exactly. You cannot slice 29 up evenly. You can't insert a fake chapter or remove a real one without instantly breaking that prime architecture.
That's why.
So you have a mathematically indivisible lock, the 29, deploying a perfectly balanced phonetic variable of 14 and 14.
Okay, wait, quick footnote here for the listener. This header payload architecture, it is basically like a data packet over Wi-Fi, isn't it?
Oh, perfectly said. Yes. The header is the routing instructions, and the payload is the actual picture you're downloading.
It is genuinely mind-bending to think about a text utilizing concepts we only formalized in the modern era of digital networking. We're talking about a 7th century text utilizing a Wi-Fi packet architecture.
It really is staggering.
But, okay, if those 14 letters are the structural routing instructions, the metadata, how do they actually build the ideas we read? Having a mathematical lock on a text is one thing, but understanding how that raw code translates into language and physics, that's a massive leap.
It is. And to understand that leap, we have to move from the sheer math of the system to the physics of its language. We have to look at how the operating system describes its own compilation.
Right, the Muqaṭṭaʿāt concept. Ahmed paints this incredibly vivid picture. He describes the dynamic process of, imagine a solid sheet of glass violently shattering.
And then perfectly, rhythmically reassembling itself into a complex, three-dimensional geometric sculpture.
Yes. That gave me chills when I read it. That sectioning, detailing, and structuring of raw material into something complex.
Exactly. That is the essence of Muqaṭṭaʿāt. And it perfectly aligns with the linguistic analysis of the text, because Ahmed points us directly to Surahs, which is chapter 11, verse 1.
Okay.
The text doesn't hide its methodology. It explicitly states it. The chapter begins with the disconnected letters, Alif, Lam, Ra.
Just the raw code.
Just the raw code. And immediately following that, it says, this is a book whose verses are perfected. And it uses the Arabic word uthimat, which implies something being consolidated or structurally locked.
Locked, right.
And then it says those locked verses are explained in detail, which is the word funat.
So the text is literally handing the reader its own compiler instructions.
Precisely.
It starts with the raw letters, Alif, Lam, Ra, and then basically says, watch how these raw elements are perfected, locked, and then detailed into a complex system.
In a system-level analysis, those disconnected letters form an atomic preamble.
Atomic preamble.
Yeah. They represent the absolute fundamental components of language sitting in their raw, uncombined state. They are linguistic atoms before they are synthesized into the complex molecular explanation of the payload.
Let's do another quick footnote here. Atomic semantic extraction. It is exactly like looking at the periodic table of elements before reading the chemistry textbook.
That's the perfect analogy. If you don't understand the atomic weights of hydrogen and oxygen, the chemistry textbook is basically just magic to you.
Yeah, just words on a page.
You have to know the foundational elements first. The surahs that begin with these letters are explicitly establishing those first principles.
They're setting up the physics.
Right. The empirical laws of evidence that the rest of the text will completely rely upon. Ahmed actually notes that this atomic preamble acts as the foundation of the book, or al-Kitabi, as it's defined in Surah Ali Imran, chapter 3, verse 7.
So without the atomic preamble, the complex narratives have no structural grounding at all.
None. They would just be floating stories.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. Because if I'm auditing this system and I accept that these atomic preambles are crucial for protecting the data and establishing the physics, a glaring contradiction pops up.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Why didn't the source just put them at the start of all 114 surahs? I mean, in modern communications theory, if metadata categorizes your system, you put metadata on every single file.
Right.
Why leave 85 chapters completely devoid of a header? It feels like a massive oversight.
It really does seem like a vulnerability at first glance, but it actually demonstrates an incredibly advanced understanding of systemic alerting.
Okay, explain that.
Think about it. If every single chapter had a systemic alert, if every single surah began with an atomic preamble, the functional utility of that alert would be completely neutralized.
Oh, like alarm fatigue in a hospital ICU.
Yes.
If every machine is constantly beeping for every minor status update, the nurses eventually just tune out the beeps. The alert loses all its psychological and functional power.
Exactly that. Metadata is only useful if it distinguishes one specific data set from another. The system requires functional differentiation. If everything is heavily coded metadata, then nothing is.
Right.
To prevent noise, the operating system uses two distinctly different types of modules.
Let's actually look at how those modules operate in practice, because this completely shifted how I view the layout of the entire book.
Yeah, it's a paradigm shift. So first, you have the header surahs. These are the 29 primary proof modules we've been talking about. They deal entirely with the blueprint level of reality.
The theoretical stuff.
Right. Ahmed gives some brilliant examples here. Take Surah Qaf, chapter 50. This is a module that deals with the highly complex theoretical physics of how dead Earth is biologically revived.
Okay.
Or take Surah Maryam, chapter 19. That one details the underlying mechanisms of how pure information is securely transmitted through generations of human history without being corrupted.
So really high-density foundational physics and information theory.
Exactly. Because the system is about to explain such heavy theoretical data, it deploys a header. It utilizes those disconnected letters to trigger a systemic alert.
A warning.
Right, warning the auditor's intellect to prepare for blueprint-level concepts.
But then you have the operational surahs, the remaining 85 secondary implementation modules.
And these modules don't need to reestablish the blueprint. They simply build upon it. They provide specific societal, historical, or personal protocols based on the physics already proven in the header chapters.
I love the example Ahmed uses here. Surah Al-Waqiah, chapter 56.
Yes, the logic there is airtight.
It really is. Because this chapter describes the ultimate collapse of the physical system, literally the end of the physical universe as we know it. It is massive world-ending data.
But
it uses absolutely no header. There are no disconnected letters at the start of it. And as an auditor, your first instinct is to say, wait, wouldn't the end of the universe require the biggest high-density alert in the book?
And the answer reveals the sheer efficiency of the code. The physics of that universal collapse were already structurally verified.
In chapter 50.
Exactly, in the header of Surah Qaf. The system doesn't need to repeat its structural proofs. It established the rules of physical revival and collapse 6 chapters earlier.
So by the time you reach chapter 56, the system just executes the operational payload.
It just runs the program.
Wow. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at an operating system that outright refuses to waste a single line of code. It never repeats metadata unnecessarily.
The strict boundary between the blueprint chapters and the implementation chapters is flawlessly maintained.
Which fundamentally changes what it means to interact with this text. I mean, understanding this 1414 architecture, the atomic preamble, the alarm fatigue, it only destroys the idea of passive reading.
It demands engagement.
So what does this all mean? Like, for you, the person listening right now, how does this reframe your relationship with ancient texts?
It changes everything.
For so long, we've been taught to look at Scripture through the lens of blind faith or pure emotion, or, some highly subjective mystical interpretation where whatever you feel is what the text means.
Right.
But Ahmed's methodology leaves absolutely no room for that. If the text is in the mathematical system, you cannot just be a passive believer. You must become an active auditor.
And the text explicitly demands this of you. This is what is so compelling about Ahmed's conclusion. He points out that the Quran repeatedly states its internal logic is designed for a people who know.
A people who know.
Yeah, the Arabic phrase is liqwamin yalamun, and for those of intellect, al-alimun. The source of this text does not make itself manifest through emotional manipulation or blind obedience.
Yeah.
It makes itself manifest through the relentless, rigorous application of reason. The Arabic word for this deep, rational intellect is al-alikal.
And Ahmed actually outlines that decoding these headers requires a consistent 4-step deconstruction protocol applied to every single letter cluster. You don't just read it and move on.
You can't.
Right. First, you have to isolate the variables, treating the letters as raw data. Then you cross-reference their systemic usage, basically mapping where else that exact cluster appears across all 29 headers.
Looking for the patterns.
Exactly. Third, you identify the physical or theoretical law being established in that specific blueprint. And finally, you apply that established law to the operational payloads that follow. It is a highly active, fiercely logical workflow.
You are literally deconstructing the data packet. You check the routing instructions, you verify the payload against the established physics of the header, and then you test for systemic consistency.
We have covered massive ground today.
We really have.
We started with the sheer mathematics of it, the indivisible lock of 29 chapters, deploying that exact 1414 split between the prime 14 global protocols and the local operators.
The mizan.
The balance, yes. We looked at the shattering and reassembling glass of Funlat, seeing how raw atomic letters synthesize into a detailed payload.
And we discovered that these mysterious chapters aren't mystical riddles at all.
Not at all. They are the master grid infrastructure of a deeply efficient linguistic operating system.
It takes something ancient and proves its architecture is universally fundamentally logical.
Which is incredible.
Right.
And this raises an important question, and it's what I want to leave you with today. We've spent this time looking at an ancient text functioning as an operating system.
Utilizing headers and payloads,
Yeah.
atomic semantic extraction.
Right. But if a text compiled in the 7th century perfectly mirrors the architecture of digital reality and complex systems theory,
Yeah.
it begs a much larger question about the reality you live in every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
If the book is an operating system, what if the physical universe itself is just a localized payload waiting to be audited? Are we the ones reading the code, or are we the code itself waiting for a people of intellect to finally deconstruct us?